Spent at 1752 Pacific Avenue, Alton, Utah. I was born October the 7th, 1902, 2 years after my parents had immigrated from Örebro, Sweden. My family had come over in 4 sections, the first being my 16-year-old brother Carl, who went to the home of a former missionary. Then my father left for this country, and next was mother with 5 of the smaller children. Rita, the oldest, and Ethel and Ellen, who was only 10, were left behind. I can only admire my mother, who had such great faith and courage to separate her family and go to a strange country. We had only been here a short time when 5-year-old Ethel died, but it was through this sad occasion that it became known that 3 children were still in Sweden. Through the kindness and efforts of a man named Lindquist, also a mortician, and the help of Peter Ernstrom, an elder who had converted my parents, money was raised to send for Erika, who was 18, Ethel slightly younger, and Ellen. Now the whole family was here, and it was 1901. I came along the next year, the 10th and last child of Eric William Larson and Sigrid Sophia Eckenberg. Fond memories are uppermost in my mind when I think of the next 10 years spent in this home. I was too young to realize that my father worked hard to pay off the debt incurred in getting his family to America, that he also worked hard on the acre of ground he owned to grow vegetables, fruit, and so on for his family, and feed for the cow and horse he owned. We also had chickens. But I do know that Mother worked very hard to help take care of the animals and garden besides the daily chores of keeping the family fed and clean. No one but Mother ever milked the cow. I do not think she trusted anyone else to do it. Later on, I helped feed the chickens, and during the summer, when it was hot and the cow was milked outdoors, I had to stand with a large branch and wave it back and forth over the cow to keep the flies away. I was always afraid of that cow, but loved the horse and was never afraid to ride it, and of the game to use to run under its stomach. Buck and King were 2 of the horses I remember best. Papa, as we called our father, took great pride in his horses and kept them well curried and brushed. And when Buck was hitched to the surrey with the fringe on top, it was a sight I loved. Then Eleanor and I, dressed in our best, with Father and Mother, would go visiting on a Sunday afternoon, or to church or to town on a Saturday night, to buy groceries and often take in a movie. I guess I remember the grocery buying the best, because we traded with Olsen, a kind man who had also come to Sweden, and always had time to talk with us, and when Papa paid the monthly bill, handed us a huge sack of candy. At the age of 3, Eleanor became very ill with a crippling disease, which was to last 3 years. She was finally able to walk with the aid of crutches, and an iron foundation was fastened on the shoe of one foot, with a leg that had seemed to shorten and not grow during the illness. Her whole body was thrown to one side, and as an exercise, she would carry a heavy bag of sand to help pull her body to an upright position. Eleanor always was a prayerful child, full of faith, and she knew if she went to the Salt Lake Temple and received the blessing, that she could walk without crutches. In her early teens, this was done, and she did walk without her crutches. The heavy shoe was also not worn, and although she walked with a limp and her head was still slightly forced to one side, she was a happy girl and always fun to be with. She played as rough as anyone, and I can truly say I did not notice the limp, even though I knew it was there. Now another sadness was to come to us, although it happened while I was so young I can remember very little of it. At school one day, Hilda was hit by a hard snowball, thrown playfully by a boy. It struck her on the temple, causing her to bleed inwardly, and after 3 months she died at the age of 14. The family always spoke so lovingly of her that I know we all miss having another wonderful sister to grow up with. Another duty that was mine, but one I enjoyed, was carrying milk to some of the neighbors who bought it from us. Mother would pour it in a large lard bucket, and the recipient would take the bucket and empty it into her pan and hand me back the bucket. I knew all these families, and they treated me fine. One of the neighbors owned a small store, and when the grandma came to the door, she would slip me an all-day sucker. On cool evenings, Mama would take a large black shawl, put it over my shoulders, cross it in front, and tie the ends in the back, leaving my hands free to carry the milk. Our home was heated by coal stoves, and I remember the lamps we used for light. A pump for water was outside, and often hot water had to be poured over it during the winter because of the water being frozen. It was a great day when the pump was also brought inside the kitchen, but still the water had to be heated on the stove. Christmas was a big event in our lives. Being Swedish, we celebrated Christmas Eve by having a traditional Swedish supper consisting of a fish called lutefisk. This was a sort of dried cod that looked like a long, stiff board. The fish was soaked in a brine for several weeks, and eventually, when it was cooked, it came out white and fluffy and delicious, and was served with milk gravy or melted butter. Also, we had brown sweet beans, fluffy potatoes, vegetables, and for dessert, a rice pudding, and many sweet breads and cookies. The tree was set in the parlor in the middle of the floor, with many colored candles, strings of cranberries and popcorn and apples and candy, and cookies decorating it. We would dance around this tree singing Swedish songs. Later the presents were passed out. Hairpins, beads, doll dishes, and toy pianos are some of the things I remember. Also, we usually had a new dress. One Christmas, my sister and I received dolls with hidden strings, and when you pulled one, it said Mama. The other said Papa. Long black stockings and shoes with laces and long-legged underwear kept us warm. Central heating wasn't heard of, and we burned coal in the kitchen and in a heating stove in the parlor. At night, I remember Mama wrapping hot lids of the stove in newspapers and putting them in the bed to warm our feet. My clothes were all homemade and made by my older sister, Rita. Once I had a coat made out of an old overcoat of my father's. It was warm, but so heavy I could hardly run in it. I hated the long underwear, and so that I wouldn't have that ridge around the top of my shoe, I would pull the leg of the underwear under my foot, and it kept its shape even when washed. Winter was fun because we had a horse-drawn sleigh, tucked in with a lap robe around us, and the jingle of the bells on the horses with my father driving is one of my happiest memories. Since we lived some distance from the third ward which we lived in, primary was held in the home of the Wilkinsons, our neighbors, and the family of Ernest Wilkinson, president of BYU. We were driven to school in a covered school wagon drawn by two big horses, and all of the children would meet on one corner and be picked up there. I had a special friend, Thelma, I would sit with, and everything seemed like fun. I went to the Mount Fort School at that time. When I was 10 years old, my father was called on a mission to Sweden, and our home was sold, and we moved nearer town on 18th Street. Now we lived in the 10th Ward, where primary, religion class, Sunday school, and later mutual played a big part in my life. But that is another story.
Well, that's great, Mom. That's good. That was Carol's. She was responsible for that, or I never would have written it.
It's beautiful.
And I'm glad I did. I'm glad you asked me. And to think that you bring it out now. Oh.
I'm glad I remembered where it was and kept it. We had gotten it out about a month ago for a family home evening and listened to it. So it's really helpful.
Well, that really gives you a big idea of how your grandpa grew up.
Yeah.